Hello, hello, welcome. My name is Rihanna Hartley, and you have arrived to my channel. Today, I'm starting off with something that is at the heart of what I do, and I will be sharing with you framework for how to tell your story and why it matters. Like, this is a really big deal. Like, there's a reason why I'm starting with this video first and foremost, because when we do this, it has the power to change not just our life, but our destiny, and practically speaking, also our business and our brand. So let's get into it. What if I told you that the version of your story that you tell yourself and others directly determines the quality and trajectory of your life and your business? If I told you that, would you take more care to craft the best version of your story? Would you be more mindful, investigating its subtle details? Would you take the time and the opportunity to frame your story in such a way that it sets you up for a life of peace, satisfaction, and wild success? I think you would. We know that the stories told in media, in our culture, in our family, in religion, in businesses, places, schools, even stories told amongst friends, that it not only directs your perspective, but it ultimately shapes your behaviors. So, it's time to understand how this storytelling magic can work for you in your own life. How can you craft your own story to tap into this power of influence and world creation? I want you to watch through to the end for the actual framework, the action steps to start telling your own best story. And this is going to have immediate impact in your life and in your business. Now, most of us adopt stories that are told about us, and we're unaware of our subjugation ultimately to someone else's spell. And here's how that can happen. You're not fully conscious of the story you believe and the story you tell about yourself. And unfortunately, it could be a disempowering one. You unknowingly let conditioning, influence, and possibly shame dictate the story of who you are. This trajectory puts clarity of your purpose, it puts your success, and it puts your own empowerment out of reach when you're rolling with that unconscious negative story. Those who tell stories rule the world. And this comes from a Hopi American Indian proverb. Now, harmful stories are often told about groups of people, types of people, and then there's also the acute infection, the acute wounding that comes from being told something specifically about you, the individual. For example, when you were growing up, a teacher might have said that you won't amount to anything. And then years later, you condemn yourself as unambitious or lazy. You're co-signing on that thing you heard long ago. A parent might have said, you're miserable, and you take that on, and then you grow to have lots of shame about the part of you that feels melancholy, which is natural. Now, after a while, we no longer need external forces to push us in the wrong direction. We ultimately become conditioned to think less of ourselves. That's the bias. For example, your first attempt at becoming an entrepreneur might not have panned out. You then deem yourself a failure and decide you're only good enough to work for others. Maybe your last few relationships didn't pan out. You conclude you can't trust yourself to choose the right partner. Do you see how unexamined stories tend to default to blaming ourselves, shaming ourselves, and self-attack? Again, this is not something that you're choosing. This is ultimately how we are groomed to think. We develop a bias to just shit on ourselves, which is unfortunate, but it is true. So taking the time to craft your story is really important because you get to go back and unload all of the garbage that you've picked up and that you've woven into the fabric of who you are. And you also get to take the time to rewrite this story in a way that is true, in a way that is loving and kind. Here's another great quote. This one's from me. The greatest story ever told is the story you tell yourself about yourself. Why? Because this story repeats and reiterates nonstop. It becomes a belief that operates and creates from the background of your consciousness, drawing unto you experiences, people, circumstances that match that energy and perspective. On the micro level, every single day, your default story influences all of your choices. No exaggeration. From what you choose to wear, to how you hold your posture, from the color you choose for your brand, to the price that you charge, from the type of clients and friends and people that you attract, to the tone of your voice when you speak about yourself, from the words you use to describe what you do, to what you hold possible for yourself and your life. All of these inputs into the direction of your life come from that story, the story that you tell yourself about who you are. Now, do you see how it informs everything, every choice on a daily level? Do you see how this story has tremendous power? And that's why I'm making this video, so that you can choose consciously. A consciously crafted story is one that you face head on. You shine the light of your loving attention on it. You look for truth, you look for kindness, and you look for potency. Consciously crafting and owning your truth, the mythos of who you're here to be, it actually rewrites your past, your present, and your future. And embodying it turns on a new broadcast signal, a tractor beam for the reality you want to create. And this is how new relationships, money, health, well-being, and a divine connection can access and flow into your experience. You get to turn this on. So how does this magical storytelling actually work? A little fact to back this up. According to behavioral scientist Susan Weinschenk, you use more of your brain when you listen to a story than when you listen to a series of facts. Hence, storytelling leads to a richer experience in the brain, which results in an increased level of interest, interaction, and retention from your audience. In this moment, I'm feeling like I should have already been telling you a story. It would have held your attention more. Now, in fact, it's been scientifically proven that we recall stories with more ease than facts. Okay, so knowing all of that, would you market yourself and your business with facts or with potent storytelling? Exactly. Guys, take this in. Humans are inherently interested in hearing other people's stories. We are inherently interested in hearing your story. And here's the equally significant other side to this coin, that neuroscience applies first and foremost to you. You don't tell yourself facts about who you are, you tell yourself stories about who you are. And those really freaking stick. So this is why crafting that message is taking authority over your life. It's self-empowerment, it's sovereignty, and it allows you to have control in the domain of your consciousness. Story time. I personally had a detrimental, unconscious story of who I was. Very negative and victim-y self-belief was running in my background, and it kept me thinking and living quite small. I was telling myself, and therefore telling other people, that I was destined for less in life because I was an immigrant woman of color who suffered from trauma, depression, anxiety, that I was destined for less because I chose to opt out of a traditional career path, but I never made a big name for myself, I haven't made my $1 million yet, etc., etc. So this story, this tale was on repeat, that I was failing at being an entrepreneur, failing at being a successful adult, failing at blazing my own trail. But this is how I shifted everything. It wasn't until I consciously examined my stories without the distorting lens of shame, internalized racism, internalized sexism, the effects of capitalism. It wasn't until I took all of those lenses away that I actually was able to see the truth. Hunting down and uprooting those toxic, implanted ideas, I began to see my life from a loving, wise, and compassionate perspective. I started to own the fact that I'm wildly intuitive and incredibly intelligent, and that I have significant healing powers. Removing shame and internalized disparagement, I was able to claim that I am an experienced, brilliant creative, and I wield a very powerful imagination. The truth of my story is I have a long and impressive list of bold accomplishments. So, with that self attack interrupted, I finally saw that there's a staggering amount of obstacles and tragedies that I've overcome and grown from. For so much of my life, I was unaware of how freaking awesome I was. And I'll say, if you've not done this truth telling inventory, then definitely the same can be said for you. You're basically sleeping on how amazing you really are. Your unique experiences, talents, forged strengths, they all need to be lifted up and celebrated. And this exercise will reveal and activate not just that, but activate your purpose, your superpowers, and highlight your blessings. When I took stock of the truth of my story, I started to rewrite the coding in my brain, in my psyche, in my soul. And I'm still on this journey of changing my life from the inside, but the transformation to date has already been basically a revolution. I am no longer my own worst enemy. I am my advocate and my ally. And this makes all the difference in the world when it comes to obvious things like self confidence, self love, mental health. But I gotta tell you, it's made even more of a difference in my level of impact, in my career, in my business, in my branding, in my prices, in my ability to get big things done, and a huge difference in how I'm perceived by others. So, just to recap, unexamined, unconscious story was very victimy, very woe is me, internalizing how the world sees someone like myself and basically co-signing to that story of, well, I guess I'm less than these other people. Well, I guess I'm not going to amount to as much because of who the world tells me I am, and also because of these acute moments of wounding when I've been told specific things about me. Okay, compare that to what happened when I consciously examined that narrative and rewrote it and looked at myself through a divine and loving lens. I realized I'm a freaking badass. I realized I have incredible gifts and unique talents. I realized that there's really no limit to what I can do. And my life is pretty freaking awesome. And I'm an amazing human, and people are very fortunate to know me and to get to work with me. Huge difference, night and day difference. Okay, how do we apply this to your life? I've come up with my own easy 3-part framework for telling your story. This will give you a taste of what's possible. You can do this exercise countless times and insert not just your life story, but you can insert the story of your brand, the story of your company, your professional bio. You can insert any little sub-narrative into this framework. But we'll start zoomed out in kind of a meta way with your life story. In the disempowered version of this story, there are 3 parts. Number 1, inherited misfortune. Number 2, proof of failure or inferiority. And number 3, snuffing your spark. Compare that to the empowered version of your story. In that version, the 3 parts are your original blessing in disguise, number 2, seeing your strength, and number 3, believing in yourself. Okay? So let's say your unconscious default story goes something like the inherited misfortune part. My family has always been poor and dysfunctional. No Brady Bunch situation. My parents had issues, their parents had issues, their parents had issues, and that's pretty much all I ever got from them. The second part, proof of failure, proof of inferiority. I went to college and I tried to do a traditional career, but I couldn't hack it. Life was knocking me down, and I was subjected to bad relationships, depression, money problems, family troubles, health issues. So now I'm back to being broke. People like me don't get a lot of opportunities, and I've never really been good at anything, so I'll probably end up just like my parents. The third part of this disempowered story, snuffing your own spark. When I was sick, I discovered energy healing and working with essential oils. It helped me feel better, and I was definitely interested in it. So I took some classes, and I'd love to have a career doing this work, But I don't think energy work and essential oils can actually pay the bills. My family thinks it's crazy, and besides, who would hire someone with no experience who's still a mess and still broke? So, that perspective, that was one, two, and three of the disempowered story. That perspective underpins unconscious narrative of being a failure, living in victimhood, and a feeling of hopelessness. So now let's hear and feel what it sounds like when we shine the light of truth on that, when we view this life through the lens of the divine. Empowered version, different three parts. Part one, original blessing in disguise. When I was young, my family didn't have a lot of money. My parents were under a lot of stress. Things weren't easy at school. It was really challenging, but the way I grew up actually cultivated a deep resilience, a creativity, and a compassion in me. When challenges arise, I know I can handle them because I was forged in the fire. Second part of the empowered version, seeing your strength. Despite the heaviness of my early days, I put myself through university and I went on to pursue a traditional career. I gave it my all and I discovered corporate trajectory, not so much for me. I think all along God wanted me to make my own way in this world, wanted me to champion my own gifts and ideas. So the choice to step off of a traditional path was bold, especially since I was healing from heartache, trauma, poor health, depression. And it wasn't easy, but I overcame so much, and I'm really proud of myself. When I was sick, I discovered energy healing and working with essential oils. It wasn't an accident, and I found the thing that actually lit me up and pointed to my purpose. Now, the third part of the empowered story, believing in yourself. I spent the last few years studying this path of healing work and transforming my own life. I've come really far, and I know I can make this work. I know I can actually make a difference for other people with this medicine. I went from feeling like I was failing, I was scared I was going to repeat my family's legacy of poverty and hurt. I went from that to finding and owning my own path. And I have so much wisdom and compassion to share. And I believe in this vision. I believe in it with my whole heart. So, those are the two stories, and I hope you can feel the difference and see how these two different versions vastly shape different experiences of life. Remember, your default perspective is going to impact your business and your brand, not just your life trajectory, not just how you view yourself. This is really practical. That can look like speaking about your service or your product with no confidence, choosing images, fonts, colors that downplay your brilliance. It could be you undercharging. It could be you withholding your truth and actually subconsciously making yourself invisible to your ideal clients. That's what that unconsciousness looks like when it shows up in your business. Now, flip the script on that using my framework. I want you to start with your life story. And then once you've had to go through that, then go back and apply this framework to your brand, to your business. So grab your journal or open up a file on your computer, and I want you to jot down the disempowered version first, the points of that story. Okay, I'll remind you again, and you can check out the article to get this in writing. Disempowered version. Number one, inherited misfortune. Number two, what is the proof of failure or proof of inferiority? And then third is snuffing your spark. Once you've done that, rewrite it from the empowered perspective. Number one, where is the original blessing in disguise? Number two, where are you seeing your strength? And then the third, believing in yourself. Once you have finished the empowered version, I want you to notice how this new rendition feels. What revelations came up as you tried on a new outlook? Take it in and take it a step further. I want you to share this new version of your story with someone you trust and then observe. How do you feel when you speak about yourself in this new way? How did the listener respond? How did it feel in the body? And I'd love to hear about how this went for you. So please drop me a line. Do the before, do the after, and then notice. Share it with someone you trust and notice. This alchemical process is foundational to the work that I do. It starts with examining the unexamined and doing so through a lens of compassion and curiosity. If you've not taken the time to do this work, there's lots there. What if the thing you've been ashamed of, the thing that you think is wrong with you, turns out to actually be a strength, a superpower, a portal into loving yourself and seeing your brilliance? From the reclaiming and retelling of your story, the fun work really begins. And this is where I get to help people with embodiment, owning the gifts and stepping into the allness of who you are and how you're meant to live and give in this world. Really trying it on and then making it an everyday wardrobe piece, right? Like, what have you learned about the truth of who you are? And then let's start to walk in that. Let's start to practice sharing that. It's a little edgy, but it's really, really, really fun. And you'll actually get to feel more like yourself. And it's an amazing thing to witness, this embodiment, right? It doesn't just shift who we are in our minds, it can shift who you are physically in your body, and it's definitely going to shift what you attract into your life and what you think is possible. So, if you are interested in this kind of life and brand transformation that changes how you feel about yourself, that weaves in this element of the divine that creates new reality, then I invite you to check out my website and book time for us to talk. And if any part of this video really struck a chord, if it resonated, if it sparked a new idea, or if you just appreciate it in some way, then absolutely like the video, consider subscribing to this channel. There'll be more great content like this to help you with your life and your brand. And I will see you next time. Thanks for listening.